Hi there, future teacher. Are you preparing for the MTLE Pedagogy Elementary Subtest 2? If so, you're in the right place. This is your complete study guide covering the two sub-areas on this exam: instruction and assessment, and professional roles and responsibilities. We're going to walk through every key concept, every major theory, and every classroom strategy you need to know to pass. Grab your notebook and pen, and let's get started. Before we dive in, here's something to help you get the most out of this lesson. Research shows that students who actively take notes retain up to 29% more information than those who passively watch. So we created a completely free study guide workbook that follows this exact video. It includes all the key terms, comparison tables, practice questions, and plenty of space for your own notes. To get your free copy, just click the link in the description below. This video is proudly presented by TeacherPreps.com, where we offer a complete test prep program for the MTLE Pedagogy Elementary exam, including study guides, full-length timed practice tests, vocabulary exercises, and AI-scored constructed response practice. Our program is self-paced and free to start, so when you're ready, visit us at TeacherPreps.com. All right, that was our plug. For the rest of this video, it's go time. Grab your pen and paper. Ready? Let's begin. Let's start by understanding what you're walking into on test day. The MTLE Pedagogy Elementary Subtest 2 has approximately 50 multiple-choice questions. You'll have up to 1 hour to complete it. No reference materials are allowed. That gives you roughly 1 minute and 12 seconds per question. The test covers 2 sub-areas, each worth 50% of your score. Subarea I is instruction and assessment, which has 3 competencies. Subarea II is professional roles and responsibilities, also with 3 competencies. That's 6 competencies total. Each one is packed with theory and classroom applications. We'll cover every single one in this video. Here's how the 2 sub-areas break down. Subarea I, instruction and assessment, covers 3 big areas. First, understanding different types of assessment and how to use them. Second, instructional planning, including backward design and differentiation. Third, instructional strategies that promote critical thinking and engagement. Subarea II, professional roles and responsibilities, also covers 3 areas. First, communicating and collaborating with families, colleagues, and the community. Second, professional development and reflective practice. And third, the historical and philosophical foundations of education, student rights, and the code of ethics for Minnesota teachers. Since both sub-areas are equally weighted at 50% each, we'll give them equal depth. Let's start with Subarea I. Competency 7 is all about assessment. This is one of the most heavily tested topics on Subtest 2, so let's be thorough. First, you need to understand the 2 major categories: formal and informal assessment. Formal assessments are standardized and have specific administration procedures. There are 2 key types of formal assessments. Criterion reference tests measure student performance against a fixed set of standards. For example, a spelling test where every student who scores 90% or higher passes. The student is compared to a standard, not to other students. Norm reference tests compare students to each other using percentile rankings. Standardized tests like the Iowa assessments or MAP tests are norm referenced. They tell you how a student performs relative to a national sample. A student scoring at the 75th percentile did better than 75% of students in the norming group. Teacher-made tests are constructed by the classroom teacher to match specific instructional objectives. Their strength is alignment. They test exactly what was taught. Their limitation is that they may lack the statistical rigor of published tests. Now let's cover informal assessments. These are flexible, classroom-based tools that provide real-time feedback. Performance-based assessments ask students to demonstrate learning through a task. Think science experiments, oral presentations, art projects, or building a model. These are especially powerful when paper and pencil tests can't capture what a student actually knows and can do. Portfolios are collections of student work gathered over time. They show growth and development. A portfolio might include writing samples from September, December, and May, so both the teacher and student can see how much progress has been made. Portfolios support authentic assessment and student reflection. Teacher observation is another critical informal tool. Systematic observation uses checklists, rating scales, and running records to document what the teacher sees. Anecdotal records are brief narrative notes about specific incidents. Peer assessment has students evaluate each other's work using rubrics. This develops critical thinking and helps students internalize quality standards. Student self-assessment is a metacognitive skill where students reflect on their own learning using tools like traffic light cards, learning logs, and student-friendly rubrics. Here's the key. Know when each type is most appropriate. Use formal assessments for accountability and program evaluation. Use informal assessments for daily instructional decisions. Now let's talk about measurement theory. 3 concepts are essential: validity, reliability, and bias. Validity means the assessment measures what it claims to measure. Content validity asks, does the test cover the content that was taught? Construct validity asks, does the test actually measure the concept it targets? Criterion validity asks, do the test scores correlate with other measures of the same skill? Here's a concrete example. A math test that includes reading-heavy word problems may lack validity for measuring math skills in English language learners, because it's really testing reading ability, not math ability. Reliability means consistency of results. If a student takes the same test twice under similar conditions, scores should be similar. That's test-retest reliability. Inter-rater reliability means 2 different scores would give the same essay the same score. Internal consistency means all items on the test measure the same construct. Bias is systematic advantage or disadvantage for particular groups. Cultural bias occurs when test content assumes experiences that aren't universal across cultures. Linguistic bias disadvantages students who speak a different first language. Gender bias uses contexts or language that favor one gender. To reduce bias in teacher-made tests, use diverse contexts, avoid culturally specific references, and have a colleague review items. Your exam will test whether you know the difference between assessment and evaluation. Assessment is the process of gathering information about student learning. It's the data collection phase. Evaluation is making judgments about the quality or value of student performance based on assessment data. It's the interpretation phase. Think of it this way. Assessment is the thermometer. Evaluation is deciding whether the patient has a fever. Assessment drives instruction. Formative assessment informs daily teaching decisions. Summative assessment evaluates what students have learned at the end of a unit or term. Now let's cover the 4 purposes of assessment. Monitoring means ongoing tracking of student progress. Tools include formative assessments, exit tickets, and observation checklists. Comparing means measuring student performance against peers or benchmarks. This uses norm reference tests and percentile rankings. Screening is a quick assessment to identify students who may need additional support. Universal screening tools like Dibbles and AIMSweb are administered at the beginning of the year. Diagnosing is an in-depth assessment to identify specific learning difficulties. Diagnostic reading inventories and math diagnostic interviews help pinpoint exactly where a student's understanding breaks down. Match the purpose to the timing. Screen at the start of the year, monitor weekly, diagnose when a student struggles, and give summative assessments at the end of a unit. Now let's talk about integrating assessment and instruction. The assessment instruction cycle works like this: plan instruction, assess, analyze results, adjust instruction, then reassess. This is not a one-time event. It's a continuous loop. Formative assessment strategies embedded in instruction include Think Pair Share, where students discuss with a partner before sharing; individual whiteboards, where every student shows their answer simultaneously; exit tickets, a quick check at the end of class; thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways for quick comprehension checks; KWL charts, which track what students know, want to know, and learned; and strategic questioning techniques. Here's a classroom example. A 3rd grade teacher gives an exit ticket on fractions. She discovers that 8 students confuse the numerator and denominator. The next day, she pulls those 8 students into a small group and reteaches using fraction manipulatives while the rest of the class works on an enrichment activity. That's the power of formative assessment. Students who need more support get it, and students who are ready move forward. Student self-assessment is a metacognitive skill that develops with practice and scaffolding. The exam will test your ability to help students evaluate their own learning. Specific self-assessment strategies for elementary students include learning logs, where students write about what they learned and what confused them; traffic light cards, where green means I get it, yellow means I'm not sure, and red means I need help. Student-friendly rubrics written in I Can language, portfolio reflection sheets where students choose their best work and explain why, and goal-setting conferences between teacher and student. Teach students to use I Can statements aligned to learning targets. For example, I can add fractions with like denominators. The SMART goal framework adapted for elementary students means goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Here's an example. A fourth grader uses a self-assessment checklist after a writing assignment. She checks off, I included a topic sentence, and I used details from the text, but notices she didn't check, I wrote a strong conclusion. She sets a goal to focus on conclusions in her next writing piece. Your exam will also test how to modify assessments for diverse learners. The key principle is that no single assessment captures a student's full understanding. Multiple measures provide a more complete picture. Modifications for English language learners include extended time, simplified language and test directions, bilingual dictionaries, oral assessment options, visuals and diagrams paired with text, and allowing responses in the student's native language. Modifications for students with exceptionalities follow IEP requirements. Extended time, alternative test formats like oral instead of written, reduced number of items, separate testing environment, assistive technology, and modified response modes. Know the difference between accommodations and modifications. Accommodations change how a student demonstrates learning without changing the standard. Extra time is an accommodation. Modifications change what a student learns or the standard itself. A simplified version of the test content is a modification. For record keeping and communication, no FERPA basics. Student records are confidential. Only share with authorized individuals. Use data to create graphs showing student growth over time. Communicate with parents through conferences, progress reports, and digital tools like ClassDojo or Seesaw. Lead parent conferences with strengths, share data, and set collaborative goals. Competency 8 is about instructional planning. Effective planning starts with standards. The state defines what students must know and be able to do. Backward design, from Wiggins and McTighe's Understanding by Design, is the gold standard for instructional planning. It has 3 stages. Stage 1, identify desired results. What do you want students to learn? Stage 2, determine acceptable evidence. How will you know they learned it? Stage 3, plan learning experiences. What activities will get them there? Notice that you design the assessment before you plan the activities. This ensures your instruction is aligned to your goals from the start. The nature of the subject matter affects how you plan. Math requires sequential skill building. You can't teach multiplication before students understand addition. Social studies may allow more thematic exploration, where students investigate topics in a less linear sequence. Learning theory informs your planning. If you're using a constructivist approach, plan hands-on discovery activities. If the skill requires procedural mastery, plan structured practice with feedback. Vygotsky's zone of proximal development reminds you to plan instruction in the gap between what students can do alone and what they can do with support. Pre-assessment is critical. Find out what students already know before planning a unit. Use KWL charts, pre-tests, or informal questioning. And always account for available time and resources. Pacing guides, the school calendar, textbooks, technology, and manipulatives. Now let's talk about using data to guide planning decisions. Teachers draw on many types of data: pre-assessment results, previous year's test scores, running records, anecdotal notes, student interest surveys, and learning style inventories. This data helps you set specific, measurable learning goals for a lesson or unit. It also helps you select appropriate instructional approaches. Direct instruction works well for factual knowledge and procedural skills. Inquiry-based learning develops critical thinking and curiosity. Cooperative learning builds social skills and deeper understanding. Select materials that are culturally relevant, age-appropriate, and aligned to standards. Textbooks, trade books, digital resources, manipulatives, and primary sources. Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, is a framework for accommodating varied learners from the start. UDL provides multiple means of engagement, which is the why of learning, multiple means of representation, which is the what of learning, and multiple means of action and expression, which is the how of learning. For example, when planning a lesson on the water cycle, you might use a read aloud for auditory learners, a diagram for visual learners, and a hands-on evaporation experiment for kinesthetic learners. That's UDL in action, multiple pathways to the same learning goal. Let's talk about planning effective learning experiences. Every lesson should activate students' prior knowledge at the start. Use KWL charts, brainstorming, connecting to personal experiences, or asking, "What do you already know about this?" Anticipating preconceptions is critical. Students bring misconceptions to every lesson. If a student thinks heavier objects fall faster, your lesson must directly address and challenge that belief. Ignoring misconceptions means students will leave with the same wrong ideas. Encourage exploration and problem solving. Open-ended questions, inquiry-based tasks, discovery learning, and allowing productive struggle all build deep understanding. Scaffolding means building new skills on previously acquired ones. Break complex tasks into manageable steps. Use the gradual release model. I do, where the teacher models. We do, where teacher and students practice together. You do together, where students collaborate. And you do, where students work independently. Here's a concrete example. Teaching multi-digit multiplication. You activate prior knowledge of single-digit multiplication. You address the preconception that you just add a 0 when multiplying by 10. You use base 10 blocks for hands-on exploration, and you gradually build toward the standard algorithm. Differentiated instruction is a major exam topic. Carroll and Tomlinson's model identifies 4 elements you can differentiate: content, process, product, and learning environment. You differentiate based on 3 student factors: readiness, interest, and learning profile. Differentiating content means providing materials at different levels. For example, tiered reading materials at different lexile levels. Differentiating process means offering varied activities. Some students use manipulatives while others work abstractly. Differentiating product means giving students choice in how they demonstrate learning: a written report, a poster, a presentation, or a video. Differentiating the learning environment means flexible seating, quiet areas for independent work, and collaborative spaces for group work. Important distinction: differentiation is not creating 25 different lessons. You're providing 2 to 3 pathways through the same learning goals. Here's an example. In a 5th grade science class on ecosystems, struggling students create a labeled diagram. On-level students write an explanatory paragraph, and advanced students design an experiment. Formative assessment data determines which students need which tier. Now let's cover short-range and long-range planning. Long-range plans establish the arc of learning for the entire year. These include year-long scope and sequence documents, unit maps, and curriculum pacing guides. They determine which standards are taught when, how units connect to each other, and where assessment checkpoints fall. Short-range plans translate the long-range vision into daily instruction. A daily lesson plan includes objectives, activities, materials, assessment strategies, and time allocation. The key to effective planning is flexibility. When assessment data shows students haven't mastered a concept, adjust the plan rather than moving on. For example, a long-range plan schedules fractions for October, but pre-assessment reveals students still struggle with division. The effective teacher adjusts, reteaching division in early October and shifting fractions to late October. To evaluate plans, ask, did students meet the learning objectives? What does the data show? What would I change next time? This reflective cycle is what transforms a good teacher into a great one. Let's talk about collaborative planning and technology integration. Teaching is not a solo profession. Professional learning communities, or PLCs, are teams of teachers who meet regularly to plan instruction, analyze student data, and share strategies. Grade-level team planning ensures horizontal alignment, meaning all third-grade classes are covering the same standards. Co-planning with special education teachers prepares you for co-taught classrooms where both teachers share instruction. Vertical alignment meetings with teachers in adjacent grade levels ensure smooth transitions from one grade to the next. Interdisciplinary unit design connects multiple subjects through a common theme. For example, a unit on our community might integrate social studies content about community workers, math activities involving survey data and graphing, ELA skills like writing interview questions and reports, and technology through creating a digital presentation. The SEMR model helps you evaluate how technology transforms learning. Substitution means technology replaces paper with no functional change. Augmentation adds functional improvement, like spell check. Modification allows significant task redesign, like collaborative editing. Redefinition enables entirely new tasks, like publishing student work to a global audience. The goal is to move beyond substitution toward modification and redefinition. Competency 9 focuses on instructional strategies. Let's walk through 7 key strategies, their characteristics, advantages, and limitations. First, cooperative learning. Kagan structures like think, pair, share, jigsaw, and numbered heads together put students in structured groups with individual accountability. The advantage is deeper processing and social skill development. The limitation is unequal participation if groups aren't carefully formed. Second, interdisciplinary instruction. This connects multiple subjects through a common theme, like studying weather through science, math, ELA, and art. The advantage is deeper understanding and transfer. The limitation is that it's time-intensive to plan. Third, hands-on activities. Manipulatives, experiments, and building projects provide concrete experience that supports abstract understanding. This is especially important in elementary, where students are in Piaget's concrete operational stage. Fourth, technology-based learning. Educational software, online simulations, and digital creation tools offer engagement and differentiation. The limitation is that access and digital literacy can vary. Fifth, guided discovery. The teacher structures the environment and asks guiding questions so students discover concepts themselves. Sixth, guided practice, which is the gradual release model. And seventh, modeling, where the teacher demonstrates thinking processes through think-alouds. Let's connect instructional strategies to cognitive processes. Bloom's taxonomy is a framework with 6 levels. Remember is the lowest level, recalling facts. Understand means explaining ideas. Apply means using knowledge in new situations. Analyze means breaking information into parts and examining relationships. Evaluate means making judgments based on criteria. Create is the highest level, producing original work. Lower levels connect to direct instruction, flashcards, and graphic organizers. Higher levels connect to Socratic questioning, debates, project-based learning, and problem-based learning. Webb's depth of knowledge is an alternative framework with 4 levels: recall, skill and concept, strategic thinking, and extended thinking. To develop critical thinking in elementary students, ask open-ended questions. Why do you think that? What evidence supports your idea? Teach students to compare and contrast, analyze cause and effect, identify author's purpose and perspective, and evaluate sources. For problem solving, teach strategies like breaking problems into parts, using graphic organizers, brainstorming multiple solutions, and testing and revising approaches. Performance capabilities means students demonstrating learning through presentations, debates, science fair projects, and readers' theater. Your exam will test your ability to develop effective lesson plans that integrate technology. The components of an effective lesson plan include a learning objective aligned to a standard, an assessment showing how you'll know students met the objective, materials, including technology, an anticipatory set, which is your hook to grab student attention, direct instruction, guided practice, independent practice, and closure. Technology should enhance learning, not replace good teaching. Simulations let students explore concepts they can't physically access. Collaborative tools enable real-time peer feedback. Adaptive programs differentiate automatically based on student responses. To evaluate whether a lesson was effective, ask, did students meet the objective? What does the exit ticket data show? Was the technology an asset or a distraction? What would I change? A lesson using a digital simulation of the solar system goes beyond what a textbook illustration could show, letting students explore orbits, scale, and planetary features interactively. Effective teaching requires real-time decision-making. A lesson plan is a guide, not a script. You must continuously monitor instructional effectiveness. During instruction, check for understanding through thumbs up or down, individual whiteboards, cold calling, partner discussions, and reading body language. Confused looks and off-task behavior are signals to adjust. How to adjust in the moment. If students are struggling, slow down and reteach using a different representation. If students are bored or have already mastered the content, accelerate or add a challenge. If a student asks an unexpected but valuable question, follow it as a learning opportunity. Here's an example. During a lesson on erosion, a student asks about a recent local flood. The effective teacher connects the lesson to this real-world event, deepening engagement and understanding. That's the difference between teaching the plan, which is rigid and teacher-centered, and teaching the students, which is responsive and flexible. Let's talk about grouping strategies and using multiple approaches. Whole group instruction is efficient for introducing new concepts. Small group instruction provides targeted teaching at students' instructional levels, like guided reading groups or math workshop groups. Pairs work well for think, pair, share, partner reading, and peer editing. Independent work allows for practice and application. The key is flexible grouping. Groups change based on data, not fixed ability tracks. A student might be in the advanced reading group, but the struggling math group. For teaching the same content through multiple strategies, consider fractions. You might teach fractions through manipulatives like fraction tiles, visual models like number lines and area models, real-world context like sharing pizza equally, and abstract notation. This multi-representation approach ensures all students have access. For engagement, use active learning, choice boards, gamification with academic content, real-world connections, and movement activities like gallery walks and station rotations. Remember 3 types of engagement. Behavioral engagement means being on task. Cognitive engagement means thinking deeply. And emotional engagement means feeling interested and connected. Clear instruction requires precise academic vocabulary, logical sequencing, and multiple representations: verbal, visual, symbolic, and kinesthetic. Check for understanding after each new piece of information, not just at the end of the lesson. When a student doesn't understand one explanation, try another. If an analogy doesn't work, use a concrete example. If a visual model doesn't click, try a physical manipulation. If an abstract explanation fails, ground it in a real-world scenario. Present varied perspectives to encourage critical thinking. In social studies, examine multiple accounts of historical events. In science, explore different theories before evidence settled them. In ELA, read literature with diverse characters and viewpoints. Ask questions like, who might disagree with this? What's another way to look at this? What would happen if? For educational technology at different levels, adaptive programs like IXL, Khan Academy, and Dreambox let students work at their own pace, progressing when ready. For advanced learning, try research projects, coding activities that develop computational thinking, and digital creation tools that push students into Bloom's Create level. Broaden students' understanding of technology through digital citizenship, online safety, responsible use, and evaluating online sources. By the way, if you're finding this review helpful, we have a free full-length practice test for this exam at TeacherPreps.com. It simulates the real test-taking experience so you can build exam stamina and identify your weak areas before test day. Link is in the description. Great work covering Subarea I, assessment and instruction. You just reviewed formal and informal assessment types, measurement theory, instructional planning, differentiation, Bloom's taxonomy, and teaching strategies, which accounts for 50% of your exam. But here's the thing. The other 50%, Subarea II, the professional environment, is completely untouched. That means parent and community relationships, professional development, reflective practice, foundations of education, and the code of ethics. 6 more competencies you need to pass. Without those, you're walking into test day with half the preparation you need. The complete study guide covering both subareas, all 12 competencies, plus full-length practice tests, is available right now at TeacherPreps.com. Link in the description below. Like and subscribe so you never miss a study guide. Good luck, future teacher.